Good day, class. On our last discussion for this topic regarding exceptions, we will be modifying our existing program, file read.java, in order to point out multiple catch blocks and the finally statement or finally block. Let's begin. So we're going to open the file read program. Okay. And then we're going to modify this line in order for the file that we're going to specify to be printed out. So we're going to include a while statement or while loop. Okay. So let me close it so I wouldn't forget. And of course, we have to retrieve each line while it's reading it. So in order to do that, we're going to insert this statement, and we're going to need the readLine method. Okay. Of course, we have to check so that when it reaches the end of file, it will exit the loop or terminate the loop. And then we just have to modify this print statement so that it will display the line, the data line that has been fetched. Of course, we wouldn't forget to include a marker so that we will know, or there's an indicator that will point out the end of a particular block. Okay, so once it's done, save the file and then compile it. Okay, we forgot to define. Forgot to define the line. Save it again. I'm expecting another error that the compiler will give or generate. Let's compile it again. Okay. Now, this particular this particular error that the compiler generated is not actually an error but a warning. Okay, so we need to modify the program again in order to include this exception. Okay, so let's go back to the program. And then we will include another catch statement or catch block in order to accommodate the new exception that will possibly be generated whenever the file cannot be read. So it's almost the same as the other catch statement, and we're just going to give a warning message to the user that this file, or the file specified, cannot be read. File specified cannot be read. Okay. Save it. Compile it. Let me clear the screen first. Okay. And then we're going to test it. Test it first on a file that is not non-existing. So let's say no file that. Okay, so it works. Let's try again. This time we're going to specify the file that we have created previously on our last discussion. Is item.txt or text. Okay. Now, the last part of this topic is about the finally block. Now, the finally block will always execute whether or not the try block has successfully performed all the statements, or a catch block has caught an exception and executed some statements or all the statements inside it. Whether or not either of the two statements or blocks has executed, the finally block will always execute. So we're going to do another modification of the program. I'm always telling my class, whenever my previous classes, whenever the discussion is all about database operations or file handling operations, when you open up a resource, let's say a file, a database, a table, or any other resource, you must always close it, because resources eats up memory. So if you don't close it, it will cause significant or it will cause poor performance on your system, because that resource will stay even if your program or system has been terminated. So don't forget, when you open up a resource, you must close it after your operation or statement operations has executed. Okay, so let's go back to the program, and we're going to include a finally statement or block. And then we're going to check if that resource was opened previously or not. Okay, let's make this a marker to signify the end of the block. And then we're going to include another try catch block here. Of course, there's nothing much that we can do if ever there's an exception. Okay. We're just going to inform the user that there's a problem. With the resource, file cannot be closed. And then I'm going to inside the try block, we're going to include the close method to close that particular resource or file, the file that was open, if it was opened, successfully opened in the try block. Now, since we have included a try catch inside the finally statement or block, this one will not be recognized. That's why we're going to modify it. This one, we're just going to copy this one, or declare it first as static so that it will be recognized inside the try block of the finally block. Sounds confusing at first, but if we run it, you'll understand. Okay, and then we have to erase this one. Okay, check the program if we've forgot any semicolons or statements, misspelled statements. Seems fine. Save the file. Okay, so let's compile it. Okay, no problem. Test it. Let's test it first with data.txt file that is non-existing. Okay, run it again. Okay, in summary, we can include multiple try-catch blocks or catch blocks whenever it's appropriate. So in this particular example, there's a possibility of two exceptions being generated, the file not found exception and the IO exception. And then the finally block is usually used for cleanup. So in this particular scenario, it is essential to have a finally block. Now the finally block here is the purpose of this finally block is to close the resource or the file that was opened. Okay, so don't forget, if you want to try this out, try the program, pause it, and then or take a picture of it if you want to enter it later in your computer. This wraps up our discussion with regards to exceptions. I'll post other videos with regards to the other topics in Java that's included in your syllabus. Good day, class. Thank you.